Hey, welcome to United Opposition with Scott and
Marshall.
Did I look the right direction? Oh, yeah, I did. Okay, good. Yeah. You know what? We talked about protesting last week, and then all of a sudden this whole weekend broke out. So I guess maybe did we make that happen? I don't know. Let's find out. We're going to talk about it. Here we go. That's right. This here's United Opposition with Scott and Marshall, where we talk about things that are happening from two sides of the aisle. We got I represent kind of the right and the conservative side. Marshall, where are you at?
Well, I guess I'm on the left.
Would that be the left and the liberal side? Left and I don't know. Is it still conservative and liberal, or is it not?
Well, it's to the left of Democrats for sure.
Gotcha.
So you call it what you want. Progressive, maybe more to the left than that, but whatever.
So last week we talked a little bit about when protests become riots. When, like, if you missed that, check it out last week. I think it was one of the best ones that we've done. I really enjoyed that, and I really enjoyed the spirit of what we were doing. I liked that kind of what we did is we started off on, let's start with where we agree and let's see where we separate instead of just coming at each other. And I think we both kind of agreed that that line where it crosses from a protest to a riot isn't always in the control of the people who started the protest.
Right.
I think we agreed on that sometimes you can have a protest that gets basically hijacked by rioters. We talked about a little bit about, does the organizers of the protests share any culpability if every time they protest it devolves into a riot? We talked a little bit about that, and then we also talked about kind of where it crosses that line of protest to riot when maybe refresh us. Where do you think this has crossed that line, and when did it happen? If so.
Yeah, well, I think there were some instances where I think people went a little far. I think on, what was it, Sunday night, they were destroying police vehicles and other things.
Mm-hmm.
They were being pretty destructive. I don't care a whole lot about that, but I think that was really, I don't know that was conducive to winning hearts and minds to the cause. On the other hand, for the most part, from what I've seen, the protests have been relatively peaceful. Any instances of property destruction other than graffiti, looting, and things like that have been very low key, very minor instances. The LAPD is very confident that they can handle this themselves. When I was looking at the coverage yesterday, there's probably less than 1,000 people protesting. They were actually literally outnumbered by the police forces and so on. So this was a protest last night that I thought was kind of running out of steam and was probably on its last legs. And I don't think that there's much more call for any more force. Now is the time, in my opinion, to kind of back off and let it fizzle out. But then, of course, today we're seeing now that there are sympathetic protests that are happening elsewhere. ICE is continuing their raids. The Marines have arrived. And Trump is ratcheting up the pressure. So that's kind of how I see it. And I'm really curious, the movie in your head, Scott, how does this play out over the next day or few days, or how does this play out into the future?
Well, it seemed that once the National Guard arrived, things calmed down. Mm-hmm. In opposition to what everybody said was going to happen. Everybody said that they were going to come and everything was going to explode and chaos was going to happen. And they arrived, and now you can kind of walk the streets in front of the federal buildings and you're not going to get injured. So so this is not the first time that the National Guard has been called in for riots in California. I remember in 92, or 91, whatever it was. I remember, as a teenager, as a emerging adult in that area, right around graduation, right around senior year, we had a neighbor across the street who was in the California National Guard. He went on all the weekends and the 2-week trips and during the year and stuff like that. And so we saw him deploy, we saw him leave, and then we saw everything, calm down and everything, all the riots stop and all that get kind of taken care of. And then he came back a few weeks later and we talked to him about it. We said, well, what happened? He's like, well, because what was happening there is that the local gangs were riling everybody up. The local gangs were the instigators of that area. And we said, what happened? He says, well, it was all gangs. He says, and it was very simple. A bigger gang showed up and they all said, yeah, we're not messing with them. And they all dispersed. A bigger gang showed up. And there was no conflict with them. It didn't break out. So we have precedents that National Guard shows up for these riots, things calm down. At least we have that recent, 30 years ago, but we have some recent precedent in California of that happening. And it seemed like that happened. And it seems like, well, then if it's calm, why do we need to still have their enforcement around? And it's like, well, what started this was the legal due process of law. And the legal due process of law is not going to stop just because there were protesters. And so the legal due process of law was being carried out on certain individuals to be deported by ICE, and that process got interrupted. And so now that now that their things seem to be a little more secure, we need to make sure that it stays secure, because there's no reason for them to stop carrying out the due process of law that they're supposed to be doing. And
well,
so
they're not going to stop.
Right. And so they're maintaining the safety of the area and only the areas of which they're operating to carry out the due process. And so the actual military, the National Guard and the Marines are not tasked with carrying out the warrants. They're not tasked with going door to door. They're not tasked with doing those things. They're simply tasked with creating a perimeter to keep outside influence from affecting the federal agents who are doing those things, and to protect and keep the roads and travel between those sections and the detention area secure, and keep the detention area secure. That is what that's what the military has been brought in to do, because the police have not or refused to assist the federal agents in carrying out due process. And so if the police don't support the federal agents, then the federal agents can't do their job. And if the police won't support them, then the federal agents need backup to support them to do their job and carry out due process. And so that's how I understand things are happening and are intended to happen in the future.
Okay, so how does states' rights play into this? Because as we all know, Governor Newsom did not call up the National Guard. They were federalized by the president, something that hasn't happened, I think, in like 70, 80 years. And that was its own issue back in Arkansas. As generally you've expressed libertarian views, but how do you feel about this? How does this jive with your views? Is this totally okay what Trump has done? Or is this, treading upon state sovereignty?
That's a good question. I think that I'm not quite sure where I fall on the balance of when it comes to like when I think of and I'm dangerously bordering on the edge of being inconsistent, and that's why I'm looking at the saying maybe I am inconsistent. I'm not. When do I want states' rights and when do I not want states' rights? I think it's fine for states. Just using another analogy, I think it's fine for states to have different laws and different regulations for, say, concealed carry. Like you need to pass these, certain things, this certain class. And I understand that if your state wants to set up laws for concealed carry, they can do that. But I think also federally, just like a driver's license, if you get a license to carry in one state, you should be able to have reciprocity in all states. And I don't think that that's a violation of states' rights. You're gonna have your regulations, but you at least have to recognize when people travel across states, you have to recognize, just like if I have a driver's license in California, Nevada can't say, sorry, you can't drive here unless you have a Nevada license. I think there's a certain point to where reciprocity across states is important. And what we're looking at here is a is a federal agency taking care of the borders of the country. They're responsible. If it's a jurisdiction thing, they have the jurisdiction in the entire country. And, you know, Bakersfield PD, they really can't go to Los Angeles and practice law. You know, their area is Bakersfield, California. Kern County Sheriff, there's limitations of what they can do if they go to Tulare County or LA County or something like that. But a CHP can operate anywhere in California, and that's their jurisdiction, but they can't go in Nevada and do that. But U.S. Marshals they are policemen for the entire country, and what they do, they have jurisdiction in the entire country. And I believe that what's happening is that you have an agency that has jurisdiction in the entire United States, and there needs to be cooperation. I believe that there does need reciprocity and cooperation, that if there are federal laws that this agency is required to uphold, and your state refuses, literally your state decides to interfere with the carrying out of those laws, then I think that we're talking sanctuary cities, sanctuary states, places that say we are not going to recognize these federal laws, and we will not cooperate with federal agencies trying to uphold these laws. I think that is something that needs to be enforced. I think that you have a legitimate federal agency carrying out proper due process, and being obstructed by city and state officers. And I think at that point, I think that if you need more help and the city and state officers are not going to help, then you can bring in federal officers. You can bring in federal assistance as needed. And the quickest, most mobile way to do that would be the National Guard or the military, because the local municipalities are not carrying out, and they're obstructing justice at that point. So
the federal government has primacy.
Well, like I said, in this reciprocity of regulations, I believe that the federal agency has jurisdiction to carry out its lawful duties without obstruction from states.
Oh, okay, but how does the military?
But I don't think that means general. I believe that I don't believe in states' rights. Like I said, I believe there are. This is something we can discuss, and I'm open to you enlightening me on why either this is a slippery slope or whatever you want to, whatever it is you want to say. I think there are some instances where if local jurisdictions are going to interfere and obstruct the due process of federal agencies, then I think the federal agencies have the right to either arrest or remove the obstruction in the way that they need to, so that they can carry out their lawful duties.
Okay, so when it comes to the military, I see a big red flag, of course. First of all, the National Guard belongs to the state, not to the federal government. And then, of course, to deploy, the Marines, for example, is a violation of posse comitatus.
So you can't do either.
That's what it will be.
So you're saying you can't do either, ever?
No, not unless the governor of the state calls for it. What you do have is at the federal level is you have U.S. Marshals, you have the FBI, you have Homeland Security, you have the DEI, you have the ATF, you have the IRS, which actually has armed agents. You actually have this entire body of basically semi-professional. Many of these people are veterans, but really they are an armed domestic police force who are trained to engage in these activities.
So
and then, of course, go ahead.
When has this happened before?
This happens every day in this country.
No, I'm saying I'm talking about when you said it's been 80 years. When did it happen before?
Oh, in Arkansas, I think President Johnson, maybe it was Kennedy, but it was one of the presidents in the 60s, federalized the Arkansas National Guard to enforce desegregation in the schools.
Should they have done that?
Yes.
Then they should do this.
Well, this is so In that case, I think
We cannot stand against one and stand for another.
yeah. So we have civil rights laws
Yep.
in the country that are
Mhm.
pretty darn important.
Yep.
When it comes to the
Or
immigration
laws.
laws,
These are
frankly,
just,
I'm done with the immigration stuff. I am
that's fine that
so
you are. That's fine that
done.
you are. But the precedent still stands that doing this, there is a precedent for it. And if you accept once, you really have no leg to
No,
stand
this is not. Yeah. This is not. No, you again. You have a governor who is willfully defying
just
the
like
orders of a court.
just like
No, Newsom is not defying the orders of any court. Okay, so there's no ruling to desegregate the schools
Yes.
from the Supreme Court.
Now,
There's
now
no
he is.
ruling to do
There's
any
been-
of this stuff. In fact,
been-
Newsom is appealing to the courts.
Right, but the court has
Saying
said
it's inappropriate.
right, but the court has already said no, they can do this. So a court has spoken on this.
Well, I don't know about that. Is that today? Did that happen
Today I was reading before here that a court has knocked down Newsom's.
Okay.
So a court has
All right.
spoken. Are you good?
In either case, I think this is a grave mistake.
But are you good now that a court has spoken? Are you good?
Yeah. Yes. If that's how the system works. You know, it may be appealed. We may get a different ruling at the Supreme Court or whatever. But if not, that's how the system works.
And that's
we
what
want the system to work.
And the
Okay,
system
we want a system that works. I don't think the immigration system is working very well. And frankly,
what isn't working, honestly, I feel what isn't working is states shunning the federal laws. What I think isn't working is states saying, we're going to obstruct lawful activity of a federal agency. Due process.
They're not obstructing you. They're just saying we're not obligated to facilitate your operations. And that's true. The LAPD is not required to aid the federal government in its enforcement operations. It is not required to do so. That is not their mission. Their mission is to protect and to serve the people of the Los Angeles community. But that is, they are not federalized. They are not federal deputies. It is not their job, no more than it is my job or your job to help these guys. They have plenty of armed agents who are trained and capable and can come from other cooperating agencies,
which is what
they do,
and which is what they did. So this is great. So this is what needs to happen. You are saying this is what has to happen. That federal agencies need to get federal support in spite of the states in order to carry out their lawful duties. Since the states are going to, since the states and local municipalities are going to refuse to help, then what can be done except bring in?
Right. That's on them. But the problem that we run into now, of course, is that they have inflamed the public. They have caused a public uprising.
No, inflame the public.
That's what your president says it is. So I don't know, what do you call it?
No,
it's just a protest. And that's fine.
The state.
What do you want to call it?
Who has inflamed this has been the state representatives, the city representatives, and the media. That's who has inflamed.
No, the state. Okay, nobody from California state law enforcement at any level were chasing down people running from the Home Depot. These are people who are just day laborers looking for day work. They were not drug cartel members. They were not laundering money. They were not, molesting children. They were not committing murder.
That is a lie that you bought.
Right, you tell me what really happened at that Home Depot.
Yes, ICE only acts with warrants against specific people.
Okay, you tell me what happened at the Home Depot.
Because that's where the information said. That's where the information.
Why are they arresting children? Where's the warrant against the child?
That's where the information said that the people that they were looking for were, and that's why they went there, because that's and
then they just start grabbing whoever. Okay, which is inappropriate. They're not going after specific. There's a myth. So Scott, I got to tell you something. There is a myth that ICE is targeting only known criminal actors.
That's not a myth.
They are casting a broad net. There are over 7,000.
All they have is warrants for specific people.
Please let me finish what I'm saying. There are over 7,700 persons, according to Department of Homeland Security statistics. there are over 7,700 persons in ICE custody who have not committed a crime. They've not done any kind of criminal activity, including children as young as 3 years old.
Mm-hmm.
That's a problem.
Okay, so, and this is one that I don't know, and I'm curious. I didn't have a chance to look it up, and I don't know if I have a chance to do it right now. Is running from the police probable cause? If police show up,
no, because people are going to run anytime they sense danger. The fact that a police officer is present and you start running, that in and of itself, I don't believe that constitutes probable cause. What's that?
Can you be detained?
If they have a reason to detain you, if there's probable cause, if you fit a description, if there's a crime that's occurred. Well, okay, so let's say you're walking your beat, right? You hear a window break, and you see somebody running. Yes, you do have probable cause to stop that person and detain them and say, hey, why are you running? Were you over there when this happened? And see if they match it. Otherwise, you have to let them go. Because that's happened to me, actually.
No, hold on. Different situation. That's not the situation that's happening here. The situation is this. Intelligence says, information says, word on the street says, with enough information to take before a judge and a judge to agree, says, this person that we are looking for is inside this home. We are looking for this person
the
at
Home
this
Depot, Castroville Depot.
Hold on. Let me tell
Go
you.
ahead. Go ahead. I find it amusing, but go ahead.
What's amusing about it? I haven't even finished. What's
go
amusing?
Ahead, because you're saying in a home. Home Depot.
No, I'm giving you an example. I said we're starting with an analogy. I'm giving you an example, and I'm asking.
Go ahead.
Okay, listen, please. All right. Intelligence says, reports say enough to where a judge can say, yes, here's your warrant. It's a lawful warrant that says you are looking for this person at this address. So you go to that address, police surround it, they kick in the door, and 25 people run out of the house. Can they grab all 25 of them and detain them?
Well, that's probably exactly what they're doing. Yeah.
But is that not reasonable? If you're going in to get one person and 25 people start running out the doors and the windows, is it not reasonable to stop them all and detain them?
Yeah, I would say it's probably reasonable, but it's not smart.
Right, but that's what's happening.
But it's not smart.
The warrant says pick this person up at Home Depot.
Okay. It's a dumb way.
But it's reasonable.
Oh, okay. But at the end of the day, if you look at it,
to detain everyone as they run, and then in that home, as you're going in looking for that one person, and 20 people, 15 people run out.
Okay, and I know where you're going with this.
And they detain all of them. And while they detain them, they find out who they are, and they realize, oh, this is another criminal. Can they not, even though the warrant wasn't for them, when they ran out of the house and got detained?
You know the answer to all this, Scott. You're creating a stall.
What's the problem? That's all that's happening.
Okay.
They go in with a warrant for one person or two people or whatever it is. They have warrants for these people. They go in, and in the process of the raid, multiple people get detained. And then in the process of that, what they're calling is collateral arrests. That as everybody's fleeing and they're stopping everybody to find the people that they go, then they discover, oh, this is another one. This is another one. This is another one. And that's why that list goes up. That's all that's happening. It's due process. That's all that's happening.
It's a nice straw man you've built. All right, now let's talk about why this is one of the worst things we could be doing in this country right now, which is evident by the fact that people are upset. You snatch anyone
because they're riled up by people. The facts are the facts. You just agree.
If I see your child or your parent and threaten to deport them for any reason, it doesn't matter if it's entirely legal or not, you're going to have an angry and upset reaction. And that's what's happening. What's that?
I don't care. People
better care. You'd better care because first of all, you're a human. Second of all, this could happen to you. And third of all, it's harming our republic. There is an existential threat to our republic.
I've seen
boneheaded insistence on scoring easy political points against illegal immigrants.
The boneheaded insistence on following the law. I've seen so many people. It's so many times. Here's this drunk driver who kills somebody and they arrest him and he's drunk on the scene, and the family's like, you can't be arresting him, he's a father and you're taking him away from it. I don't care when people respond like that. If the person, I don't care. They were breaking the law. They were doing something. I can't care.
Yeah.
Why should I care about that?
Well, first of all, do you care about the republic? Do you care about America as a nation?
Following the laws is not the problem. People being riled up, emotionally riled up against lies, that's the problem.
Okay, okay. Regardless of the cause of the problem, it's a problem, is it not?
Right. So you're saying the solution, as I understand, you're saying the solution is for the people who are enforcing the law to just stop enforcing the law because you're upsetting the bad guys. That's your solution.
Yes, because you're upsetting the whole country. Yes,
you're upsetting.
There's a fine line between hard and stupid, right? And we are going way out across that line past stupid. And the way in which you're doing it is absolutely ridiculous. I am tired of immigration as an issue, as a political issue in this country. I'm just done with it. I'm sick of it because it has been an issue since 1620 when the first people arrived. It is the reason why we had 13 colonies instead of 1. The issue has been used to score political baskets by both the right and the left ever since the beginning of this country, and it continues to be used for that purpose. No immigration is being stopped or hardly even curtailed as far as I can tell. People still come into this country by hook or by crook, legally and illegally, over and under and however they get here. They still come into this country. And all I see are domestic resources, our tax dollars being milked from us and spent on schemes that do not work and have not worked for over almost 300 years. It's ridiculous and it needs to stop. We need to have an intelligent and compassionate way of managing our borders or not at all. That is all I'm asking for. But we need to stop doing this political one-upmanship that both sides do to each other over the immigration stuff. Both Republicans and Democrats are very good at deporting people. They are rounding people up and deporting millions of people. And in that process, the way in which they do it is deeply, deeply problematic. With the exception of Gaza and Palestine, the biggest objection that I've had to both the Obama and the Biden administration, why I can never endorse them, is because of how they treat the immigrants in this country. And we could go on and on for hours over, the stolen land thing and all of this other stuff. I don't have time for that. It's counterproductive at this point. But what I'm going to say here is that we need to dial down the temperature very quickly, or Trump is going to find himself in a lot of hot water very quickly. He's going to find himself run out of power. He's going to find himself out of office. Is what's going to happen.
I've heard that prediction already.
Powder kid. What's that?
I've heard that prediction already.
Yeah, well, here it is. Here it is. Here it is, buddy.
You're going to be wrong again.
The military is not going to hurt anybody. But if they did, they're not going to issue them live ammunition.
No.
They're not going to have them shoot looters or rioters or do any of that. It's not going to happen. But if it did happen, it would be another Boston massacre. And you know how that wound up. And it would be the same thing here today. So I think the smart thing for Trump to do is to let the domestic authorities like LAPD pull out the federal forces, stop the ICE raids, at least for now, until
stop enforcing the law.
Now, there's a fine line between hard and stupid here, right? If
right.
you want to
fine line.
You can enforce the law and destroy the country.
Right. It's a fine line that we saw here in California. We've seen that fine line here in California. There's just too many people in the prisons. There's just too much crime happening here. Let's just say, you know what? Stealing under $1,000 is no longer a crime. It's not a felony. We're not going. So then stealing goes up. All right. So, that's just too much. The drug is just too much with the war on drugs. Let's just let people have drugs and drug use and people dying.
But there's a key difference here with your straw man argument. Once more, there's a key difference with your straw man. And that is that right now you have civil unrest that's spreading to other cities across the country. That is your cue as a civic leader to take your foot off the gas.
Not when those people are being falsely riled up. That is a specific organization.
Yes. Do you want to destroy the republic or do you want to enforce the
We are not the ones. The law enforcement is not the ones. The federal law enforcement agencies are not the ones with the foot. The ones with the foot on the
okay.
gas, riling everybody up. Why aren't you telling them to stop?
I'm in a debate with King George himself here.
No, but why aren't you telling Newsom and the mayor? Why aren't you telling them, hey, stop riling up the people and let the federal
because they're trying to reduce the temperature and stop this.
No, they're not.
Newsom has not withdrawn the police from the streets. The LAPD are out there and performing enforcement operations.
Newsom is going on publicly and saying the problem
California Highway Patrol has arrived in force, and they were sent by the governor.
Why is it the law? Why is it the federal agents who are carrying out, who are legally and properly carrying out the law? Why is it them that need to take their foot off the gas? Why don't you stand here? Why don't you stand here? Why don't the people violating the law take their foot off the gas? Why don't you hold?
You have to be smart.
Because you can't.
No, you have to be smart.
Oh, your microphone.
Okay, is it breaking up now? It's probably not working anymore. All right, well, that's it. It's only good for about 30 minutes anyway.
All right, well, then that's been 30 minutes. It's been United Opposition once again hitting protesting. I'm pleasantly surprised that we came that we're on the same, that we're actually on the same page, that what the federal agencies were doing that led to this wasn't in and of itself wrong. It's been the reaction to it and the reaction to the reaction. But what they were doing did not warrant the overreaction. What they were doing was due process, and people protesting overreacted to that. And now you're saying, I disagree, but as I understand, you're saying the solution is then to back off on due process because the crybabies are too loud.
Yeah, you need to be smart. And I'm not going to call the people crybabies, by the way. I'm on the side of the protesters, to be absolutely clear here. And am I coming through clear again?
Yes. Oh, yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. Yeah. I'm definitely on the side of the protesters here. I'm definitely opposed to ICE and so on. But again,
you're opposed to due process. That's what we've established.
Yeah, due process is fine. I support due process. I think
that's what's happening. That's what ICE is doing. ICE is doing due process. You're opposed to due process.
But ICE needs to chill out. Otherwise, they're going to create a situation that's going to cause this republic to spiral into the dirt.
Ease off.
You can have all your laws all you like.
Back off on due process because people are crying too loud.
Yes.
Back off on due process.
We're a nation of people, and if the people tell you that there is a problem with the law, you need to stop and listen, because we are a nation of people first and foremost. And you need to find a different way. You need to find a different way. You need to find a different way to enforce the laws, because the people are telling you to stop. You need to stop.
Well, the best way to do that,
because the people are the ones who have the power. That's called popular sovereignty.
Yes.
So you know how power.
And their power is through their vote. Change the laws.
Oh, it's not just through the vote. It comes from the guns.
Change the laws.
It comes out of the barrel of a gun.
If that's what you're promoting, I'm saying
that's how power works. Why do you think the army is there? Why do you think the army is there? Why
are you promoting change through voting or change through guns?
I promote peaceful change until at which point peaceful change no longer achieves social justice. At that point, when people need to employ force to protect themselves from violence, they are entitled to do so.
Did you get anybody commenting on yours? I didn't see any comments on this one. If there's
I've got a few notifications. Isaiah, okay, yes, we do have. Oh no, these are not on the live stream. So, but people will comment later on the live stream. Yeah. They'll tell me what a whack job I am and so on, and they will complain about you. And that's what people do, and that's okay. The important thing here, I think, is to have some dialogue. We definitely have two different viewpoints on this, but we have to be able to have dialogue. I don't want it to get to where we start shooting at each other. It is far better for everybody to sit down over a pizza and a pitcher of beer and hash out as many of these issues as we can. There are some issues where that's just not going to happen. And I do think when it comes to people and humanity and human rights and stuff, that's one of those things. But right now, we on the sidelines, because our relatives are not being hoovered up, we're not in the streets, we're not law enforcement, we can have this discussion and
Mhm.
hopefully pray that cooler heads prevail on both sides of the issue. While I am very heavy and hard on Trump and the status quo and ICE, I will agree with you, Scott, that the people who are riled up and angry have some responsibility here. But it
You-
is definitely less than the
Some,
responsibility faced by the
but
people with the real power, which are the state.
right, we're going to finish on this. I agree. Some, I think, who has the majority of the responsibility are those on the other side who are riling up with lies, knowing that what they're saying is lies, and they're purposely riling up the opposition with lies to continue to oppose. Those are
Oh,
the instigators. The Gavin Newsoms, the mayor of Los Angeles, those are the people who are riling up the media. Those are the people who are artificially riling up something that is not actually a problem.
I will agree with you that the people who are lying to everybody need to face consequences, but I would disagree with who you think they are. But there we are.
There we are. It's been United Opposition talking again about protesting. So let's real quick at the very end of this, let's do some other subject that's not protesting, so that maybe we don't cause more protesting to happen as because we talked about protesting last week and all of a sudden it just exploded. So flowers and butterflies. Let's talk about flowers and butterflies. That'll be next week. The birds and the bee. Wait, no, we're not going to talk about the birds.
Rainbows and
rainbows and unicorns.
And
that's what we're going to do, so that we don't cause even more riots to happen. United Opposition with Scott and Marshall. Thank you for joining us. We will be back next week. God bless you guys.
Thank you.